Hey beautiful people, Shakti here, and I'm back after a little break with another live in the series of Rapture for Men, where I am with my book, going through my book, Rapture, a guide to sexual and spiritual awakening for women, but speaking chapter by chapter to the content for a male audience. Of course, if you're a woman, you're going to enjoy this as well, but welcome. So today's theme is, I'm on chapter 8 of the book. There are 19 chapters. And the theme today is sex is for the all of you. This is really, really important theme. And I kind of, some of these themes repeat themselves through the book because it's a case of having to basically flip all these narratives that have kind of been distorted and the wrong way round back the other way to bring balance back into our lives, our sensuality, our relating, our intimacy, and our world. That's how passionately I feel about this. I'm going to begin today sharing by reading a poem from by Walt Whitman, but actually I'm going to quote a couple of times today from this amazing book, which is by Sheri Winston, and it's called Women's Anatomy of Arousal. Now, I'm only just reading this for the first time. Somebody gifted me this book to add to my very extensive library. I've got a whole bookshelf full of books on female sexuality, tantra, spirituality, and so on. And yes, someone gifted me this. I hadn't read it before, but I'm just finding myself agreeing with pretty much everything she said so far. And it's a fantastic book for any woman to read, and for any man who cares about having great sex with their female partner. Anyway, let's start with this poem by Walt Whitman. And this is an extract, and the poem is called A Woman Waits for Me. A woman waits for me, she contains all. Nothing is lacking, yet all were lacking if sex were lacking, or if the moisture of the right man were lacking. Sex contains all, bodies, souls, meanings, proofs, purities, delicacies, results, promulgations, songs, commands, health, pride, the maternal mystery, the seminal milk, all hopes, benefactions, bestowals, all the passions, loves, beauties, delights of the earth, all the governments, judges, gods, followed persons of the earth. These are contained in sex as parts of itself and justifications of itself. So I just happened to read that yesterday when I knew I was going to be talking about sex is for the all of you today, and I thought, wow, how perfect. That fits in wonderfully with the theme. So there's two key points I want to make in this sharing. So one is that sex is for the all of you in the sense that for a woman, and actually for men, but I'm going to speak about women to men, right? To keep it simple for now. It's not just the three obvious places, or those obvious places that you've been trained, programmed, and also naturally find alluring and arousing. So basically, for a woman, her whole body is an erogenous zone. Every single part, every single area of her physical body can be a source of arousal and orgasm for a woman, not just the obvious places that you tend to gravitate towards. That's the first and really important thing to know. And actually it goes beyond that, because we're all made of energy, and sex is very much about energetic exchange and the arousal and activation of a particular form of energy. And we can go beyond the physical. So actually, it's not just her physical body, but her energy body, which extends out beyond the physical body, but also permeates the whole physical body, is a part of her arousal pathway. And when you know that and you're able to play and interact with her on that level, that's when things get really exciting, really expansive, and take us into the otherworldly, mystical and spiritual realms. So It's not just the very obvious genitalia parts or boobs, bum and vulva. Basically, it's everything, every part of her, not just the physical body and beyond, right? And if you're a woman watching and this doesn't feel true for you and doesn't resonate, of course, we are all absolutely unique, and I am speaking in very general terms. So, you know, trust what you know about you. But I would say from experience, myself, and from having been a facilitator in this realm for a very long time, that most women might not know that until they know it. Because there's been so much conditioning, shame, and repression of sexuality and sexual energy over centuries, that most women are going through life and this aspect of their lives without really knowing, understanding, or experiencing the potential that is available to them. And there is no reason for that potential not to be unlocked. And it does not matter what your age is, what your shape is, what your size is. It doesn't matter any of those things. That potential can be unlocked at any point in your life if you want it to be. So whole body, whole energy field, whole being. And that kind of takes me to my second point, which is that also for women, sex and sexuality are related to everything. It's not separate. So again, the very patriarchal masculine way of looking at things does tend to separate, put into boxes and make distinct, right, parts of our bodies, parts of our minds, part of our lives. But for a woman, everything is connected. And her sexuality is basically the fundamental seed of her beingness, her spirituality, her intuitive gifts, her power, her true feminine nature, her true feminine radiance. And that seed, that essence within her connects to everything. It's not separate, like the sexual aspect of her being isn't in a box that's disconnected from her emotions, her relationships, her work, her creativity, her parenting, you know, her fitness, her well-being, her health. It's all connected, right? Like this web. So that's something that it's really useful to know about when you're in a relationship and you're experiencing, for example, a lack of response or a lack of arousal or a lack of turn on or a lack of connection. Don't assume that it's about the physical organs or the physical body. It's more than likely about something else in that web. And when that something else in that web is addressed and understood and communicated about and resolved, then the sexual part will come back online. But if there's something in her awareness that she's uneasy about, that she's uncomfortable about, that she's thinking about, you know, just for example, you know that so for example, I'm a mum. So for women who are mums, there's pretty much never a time when my children are not in my mind. And we are capable of holding many things in our minds at one time and in our energy fields at one time. So not just our children, but our work, our parents, our colleagues, what we're cooking for dinner, what we need to buy, what the next project is, what color we want to paint the wall. All of these things are in our awareness simultaneously. And they can be a distraction, right? And so, of course, when we enter into aroused states, these things then go into the background and we forget about them. And that's one of the joys of making love, is that we enter into a bliss no mind state. But you can support your woman to be available and open to the possibility of arousal and lovemaking if you support her to feel calm and centered in these other areas of her life and give her support, not telling her what to do, not trying to fix her, to meditate, to take care of her body, to take exercise, to nourish herself, to resolve issues with things that need to be done in the work or administrative realm, or, you know, the gardening or the rubbish. All those kinds of things can be in our minds until they're not. So it's all connected. And I want to read to you now again from this fabulous book, Oh, actually, is there one more thing I want to say first? Yes, there is a third point actually that I want to make first before I read from the book, which is that, again, because of the patriarchal focus and the masculine focus on one thing, people tend to think when we talk about sex and sexuality that it's just about penetration and that it's just about penetration and getting to orgasm as quickly as possible. Again, if that's your focus, you're not really appreciating how a woman's sexuality is completely the opposite of that. So, and you're going to be missing out on a huge, massive area of pleasure, ecstasy, intimacy, and connection for both of you. Because the more she opens to her potential in this realm, the more she is beautiful, empowered, radiant, sexy, sensual, juicy, generous, creative, giving, happy, joyful, and the more pleasure there is to share between you, because you, man, have this capacity too, you just don't know it. So also, yeah, the third part of this is to know that sex is not just about penetration and orgasm. There's loads more that makes the experience ultra pleasurable, ultra ecstatic, and infinite, really, in its potential for that bliss, joy, and ecstasy together. And it's not just about her, but both of you. Really, really brilliant parts from this book to highlight this. So once again, I'm reading from Women's Anatomy of Arousal by Sheri Winston. Okay, a few quotes I'm going to read. So first of all, our cultural portrait of what sex is all about is inaccurate in many ways. First of all, it mostly defines real sex as penis in vagina, penetrative, heterosex. Sex doesn't have to directly involve the genital organs, and if all the other stuff is demoted, we are going to miss out on a wide range of erotic activity that's just as valid and important to pleasure. Kissing is sexual, holding hands can be sexual. It's all real sex if it turns you on. The most significant problem with the sex is intercourse picture is that women and their partners often buy into the idyllic vision of lingam in yoni mediated bliss, and therefore assume that female orgasm from penetrative sex is what they should be experiencing. The truth is that for most women, I'm going to read you, hang on, 10% of women have never had an orgasm at all. Over half of women don't have orgasms during intercourse. So obviously, you know, there's a mismatch there between expectations, media representations, and what's actually going on. And then, of course, people find themselves lacking and judge themselves or find themselves inadequate, and that's going to make things even worse. Okay, let's move on to the idea that sex is for the all of you. And I love the phrase that Sheri Winston uses here, which is holistic, as in the word W-H-O-L-E. So, speaking to women, but men understand this about your women. Your sexuality is holistic, encompassing your connection with all the interwoven, inseparable facets of your wondrous self and all that surrounds you. That includes your unique genetic blueprint, your physical, emotional, and spiritual relationship with your body, your history and life experience, the beliefs that you were exposed to growing up, your current beliefs and assumptions, your past and present intimate relationships, the myriad communities you're a part of, our ubiquitous media, and all our many other influences, and there are a lot of them, right? All these things together are what have formed your unique relationship with yourself and affect your connections with the world. This is all part of your sexuality. For many people, many of these influences are unconscious and or buried in shadow and shame. And that's why my book starts with your erotic her story, where I invite you as the reader to explore all of these influences because they all have shaped how you are showing up now in this realm of your being. And I can see, and I know I've been in this teaching in this realm for almost 20 years, a lot of it is unconscious, and you are operating in programmed ways that you think are the norm, that you think are just how you are, but they are not. Of course, there's always an element of nature, biology, genetics to how we show up in this realm, but a huge part of it is not nature, it is nurture, it is programming, it is conditioning, it is beliefs. And one really brilliant example that Sheri Winston gives of this is how in the medical educational literature, the way that female sexual anatomy has been represented and taught and talked about has been wholly inaccurate even to this present day, but also changed according to the prevailing moral code about sexuality and the prevailing attitude towards female energy and female sexuality. Isn't that interesting? So don't think that what you've been taught or told is the truth. Always question, and you know, there's always more to know. And I'm going to read you one more quote about this holistic nature of sexuality, which is really important to understand how it is all connected. So, whole sex, macro to micro, the whole universe. So, sex is not merely an activity we do, it's an integral and inseparable aspect of all life. The manifestation of the vital energy of the universe, the world, and you. Right? It's everything, it's everywhere, and it's everything, not in the coarse, crude way that you've been programmed to think about fucking, right? But just in terms of this energy that creates worlds, Shakti energy, divine feminine energy, is creative sexual energy. It's everything and it's everywhere, and the universe is making love in every second, in every cell, in every atom. Right? That's the macro. The whole world. Sex permeates everything. Its primal power affects all aspects of our world. And I really want you to get this. Sex shapes our traditions, institutions, mythologies, and cultures in positive and negative ways. Eros fuels fertility, creativity, connection, and love. So, becoming pregnant, being a mother, birthing, lactating, and post-birth trauma, menopause, menarche, all of this is part of our sexuality. It is not separate. It's intimately a part of our sexuality and our sex lives. Culture and patriarchy has taught us to separate them off. They are not separate. Eros drives evolution's mix of competition and cooperation. It spawns diversity, creates beauty, and generates elegant complexity. It influences all the ways humans organize themselves, including our political systems, our social systems, and our spiritual traditions. When we honor the power of sexuality and channel it appropriately, we transform this earth into the garden it can be. When it is denied or annihilated, you have the opposite effect. When the power and energy of Eros is squelched, it doesn't disappear. It becomes twisted and distorted. Look into the world, you'll see this. Then sex erupts into violence, leading to the pathological pursuit of power, driving all the vast evil that humanity has proven capable of. I'm not joking when I say I'm so passionate about this work, and I know Sheri Winston is too, because from my perspective, when we heal, integrate, love, and embody our true sexual potential in its purest form, there can be no war, there can be no ecological disasters, there can be no economic disasters. It just would not be possible. And all these pathological dysfunctions around sexuality would also not be possible, right? Whole connections. So she's got whole universe, whole world, whole connections, whole being. coming from the macro down to the micro, so whole connections. Your sexuality is about your connection to everyone and everything around you. Obviously, sex pervades your relationships with the people you choose to be sexual with, but since it's a fundamental aspect of who you are, it's also part of all your connections and interactions. Your sexuality informs your relationships with current and past intimate partners, family, friends, communities, culture, media, country, and the world. It ripples out and affects everything, just as everything in the web of life affects you. Okay, coming all the way down to the most micro level, whole being. You are a sexual being, not a sexual doing, and everybody is by nature. Sex is not just something you do, it's a fundamental and inseparable part of who you are. Your foundational, primary sexual relationship is with yourself. This relationship is so complex, unique, and individual as you are, and all other relationships are influenced by your core connection with yourself. Understanding who you are and how you operate sexually is fundamental to personal growth, self-integration, and achieving your full potential. So once again, people often assume that, like there's this kind of sex mad thing about people who do the kind of work that I do, or that we're available because we talk about it. No, I understand and I know and experience and see that this realm of our being is part of our living up to our greatest and highest potential. It's part of our ongoing personal and spiritual growth. It's actually about our becoming whole unto ourselves, because as Sheri Winston also stresses, this is very much about always, first and foremost, our relationship with ourselves. So again, there can be this assumption that it's about trying to get something from somebody else, or do something to somebody else, or make something happen for somebody else. But first and foremost, it's about me, understanding me, knowing me, loving me, expanding as me. As she says, if you want to have better sex, explore your full erotic potential and have deeply healthy and sustainable intimate relationships with others, you need to begin with your relationship with yourself and bring your sexuality into the light of awareness. Only after you have done this important learning and healing work and developed a strong foundation of self-love and connection to your source can you become your own fabulous lover and proceed from there to have relationships with others, including the divine union we yearn for. So your sexuality isn't just a portal to pleasure, it's a gateway to yourself. It's not something you need a partner for. Again, that's a huge misconception that we need somebody else to help us with this healing, to be sexual. We don't need anybody else at all to go on this journey and to start this journey. Of course, being with someone else is also amazing, but that's not another whole realm, because as soon as we're with somebody else, all our stuff comes up. Of course, including all the shame, all the trauma, all the wounding around our sexuality. So it's never separate, never separate. So the idea that we're fed that you can just like go and have a sexual encounter with someone and it doesn't have any other ramifications or ripples or meanings is a complete lie, because it will always affect and impact you and them in multiple ways, and that those ramifications will ripple out and touch aspects of their being quite deeply, because ultimately when a woman opens in this way, she opens her whole heart, she opens the whole being, she opens the whole energy field, and when that happens, everything is touched. So that's why it's really important for women, and this is another chapter I'm going to come on later, that we feel safe and that we are able to trust ourselves and our partners in this area, and really understand that sex is for all of us, and not continue to perpetuate the separation, the division, and the demonization of this aspect of ourselves, which patriarchy has taught us. So if you're a man watching and wanting to embrace this knowledge, this wisdom for yourself, it's a note that I wrote to myself. Oh yeah. Then understand that as you approach your woman, all of her is an erogenous zone, all of her. And sex isn't just about penetration and getting to orgasm as fast as possible. If you're taking that approach, you're very likely not going to be giving her very much pleasure. And that a sexually satisfied woman is a blessing to the world. I absolutely, absolutely believe that as we undo this conditioning of the patriarchal system, as we reverse this teaching of sin, shame, guilt, separation, blame, demonization, dualistic virgin horse split thinking, all of this, as we undo this and come to each of us fully become sovereign in our sexuality, erotic masters, without shame at all, loving ourselves, loving our bodies, having healed these wounds, I truly believe that in that case, there will be no war, there will be no ecological disasters, there will be no economical disasters. Humanity will live in love with themselves, in love with one another, and we will be taking care of our beautiful planet Earth. So that's why I'm so devoted to this path of healing. It's not a crude, lewd pathway. It's a path of love. It's a path of beauty. It's a path of innocence. It's a path of returning to our true God and Goddess selves. It's the most spiritual expression possible to truly honor the erotic life force that runs as this current through all of life, through all of us, through all of our beings, to bow down to that, to honor that, to revere that, to respect that, and bring also, of course, the light of awareness and consciousness to it, so that which is in the shadows may be fully illuminated and returned into this wholeness, which is the truth of our being. That is the end of my sharing for today. I really hope you enjoyed that, and not sure if I'm going to be able to share tomorrow because I've got to go visit my dad in his care home, but the next sharing, whenever it comes, whether it's tomorrow or the next day, is a really juicy sharing. It's chapter 9, Orgasmic Energy, Orgasmic Life. Oh, and I almost forget to say, but just want to say, if this tantric approach to life, love, relating, intimacy, and sexuality appeals to you, calls to you, then this is my speciality. This is the area of my work. Right now, I host 2 ongoing online groups. One is mixed for men and women, and one is just for women, where we meet once a month for in a sacred, safe space for tantric practice, embodied awareness practices, for sharing, for questions, for deepening in our embodiment of the truth of our holistic sexuality. From a tantric conscious perspective, I want to make clear that this is not about taking our clothes off. It's not about doing overtly sexual things. There is far more depth and profundity to this path than you may know or imagine, but it is an opening into the most exquisite holy communion within yourself, with life, with God, with others, and yes, to the exponential growth of your pleasure. So if that interests you, I'll pop the links below. One is called the Tantric Temple, which is for men and women, for all of you to come along. And one is called the Rapture Study Group, which is named after my book. So it's for readers of my book and those who want to embrace this work. It really is the most cost-effective way for you to work with me, actually. And the next groups are 20th of April is the Tantric Temple, and 27th of April is the Rapture Study Group. It's £30 to join if you come per session, but I also have this new offering where you can enroll for the year, for 12 sessions for 12 months and save some money. So if that's interesting, all the details are also in the links that I'm going to share, or you can just head on over to my website, shaktisundari.com, and look at the Rapture book or the Tantric Temple, and all the information will be there. I also worked one-to-one with individuals who really want to pursue this path or are some way along the path and would like support with particular aspects of the healing and integration of wounds and shadows as they come up, because they do. And you know, it does affect every area of your life and relating, make no mistake. So reach out to me if that calls to you also. And have a beautiful, beautiful, juicy day. Namaste.